Boards hit back, reflecting on martial art practices through Soma design. I am Yoav Luft, and I would like to thank my collaborators Pavel Karpashevich and Kristina Höök for their work on this project. In this project, I designed a series of prototypes to use in my martial art training using Soma design, research through design process, and my martial art practice as the departure point for exploration. The process culminated in an interactive wooden dummy named Rio. Documenting my training session in notes, videos, pictures, 3 categories of results were found: material qualities for designing for martial arts, movement qualities that emerge from interacting with Rio, and changes to myself as a martial artist and to my practice. An overarching theme of all these results is the tension that arises between the normative values and the practices of my martial art and the encounter with the prototypes. In material qualities, our data uncovered interesting contradictions. For example, how the decision to use fragile materials such as natural wood affected the unfolding interaction. Tension arises between the martial art practice of breaking materials to show physical prowess versus the designerly normative view of artifacts as precious, costly, and irreplaceable. Fragility cultivated a relationship of care between me and Rio. I stopped training to check on suspicious noises, similarly to how I would have stopped when a training partner would tap. And I constantly adjusted and improved upon the artifact to fix damage or to prevent future damage. Allowing for fragility made care relationships more visible, but they exist even when using more durable materials, like a boxing bag. In training with Rio, a multitude of different movements had emerged. Some movements were simply within the norms of my martial arts practice, which included taijutsu. For example, Rio's swing movement was designed to encourage me to explore and practice distancing and maneuvering my whole body, rather than using just my hands, which is greatly valued in my martial art. After some adjusting, Rio managed to elicit that at times. I could also identify myself performing adapted version of specific techniques, such as in this short clip. I block while increasing distance, and then I counterattack over the attacking arm. But not all movements were afforded by Rio. For example, in this clip I am capturing Rio's arm in the setup for a throw called Gansekinage. I never repeated it with a later prototype. Rio's bracing to the ceiling resulted in a weird, uncanny experience. How do you throw something that is so rigidly braced? Some movements were disabled due to obvious reasons. In this video I practice Osotogari with a boxing bag, but Rio reaches only down to my midriff, making this kind of practice impossible. Some of the movements that emerged in training with Rio were completely novel and occasionally unwished for. For example, I found myself mimicking this hand movement from Wing Chun, a different martial art. Seeing how this movement was elicited by my design made me realize that it is, in fact, in tension with the norms of my martial art. I should be using my whole body to affect Rio, but instead I was using only my hands. Other movements seemed in situ, like normative performances of taijutsu techniques. But when I analyzed the videos, I noticed how Rio encouraged me to make movements that would open me up for risks if I was sparring with a human sparring partner. We question whether Rio's otherness might sensitize my reactions to cues that are meaningless in a human-to-human martial arts and training, like the sound of Rio's pumps that engaged before each movement. The dynamic unfolding of Rio's movement had to be repeatedly experienced and redesigned in order to comply not only with the specific prescribed movements, but also to adhere to the underlying philosophy of the whole practice. While in taijutsu, we practice and even encourage variation, this must adhere to the overarching values and strategies conveyed in the practice. Engaging in design work on Rio helped me to develop a better Soma aesthetic appreciation for my own established martial art practice. It helped me to develop new training exercises. It improved my practice through reflection, and it encouraged me to articulate tacit norms of taijutsu practice. The defamiliarization exercise I explored during the design process opened up new possibilities for my normative training. For example, using branches and other markers to denote trajectories of imagined incoming attacks, and practicing positioning my body in the correct alignment for a counterattack. Or using branches to practice elbow locks, applying the lock against the branch until it breaks. The analysis of my interactions with Conrio and with earlier prototypes served a role in reflecting about my own practice, helping me to identify deviations in my movements from the norms and train on improving my practice. Finally, through the design process, I articulated tacit norms of my martial arts practice. Reflecting and analyzing movements in the skies drove me to articulate what kind of norms were challenged and why. The Wing Chun movement, for example, clarified that using only the hands is in tension with normative values. Practicing breaking branches, on the other hand, articulated to me the social norms of training with a partner, one that prescribes that we shouldn't hurt our training partners even when training techniques that are intended to cause bodily harm. The notion that introducing new technologies into an established bodily practice will change the practice and its practitioners is nothing new and well attested in HCI literature. What we present here instead is an account of how such change occurs and how tensions between the designed technology and the existing norms can help the expert practitioner to articulate the norms of their practice in order to improve, enrich, or revamp it. We claim that the methods used in Soma design can be useful to achieve exactly that, by engaging in reflection, defamiliarization, deconstruction, and then reconstruction through design of training aids and new exercises. Bodily practice experts can transform themselves and their practice. My autobiographical account presents a possible path for cultivating one's somaesthetic appreciation to their intelligent or artistic habit by breaking apart from their routine and challenging it and our entrenched assumptions. Finally, we challenge an idea that is often implied in design works that involve expert, that is, that the expert is an unchanging and anchoring element for the design process. In fact, in this research, we show that this is not the case. The experts themselves change by engaging in design work.